This is the Messiah Hour with Ari Lewis.
All right, welcome everyone to today's episode of the Messiah Hour here on IsraelSportsandNewsRadio.com. Thank you for joining us. At any time, if you'd like to make a financial contribution to the show, you can do so through my PayPal, which is IsraelSportsRadio@yahoo.com. And, of course, you can send an email to MessiahHour@gmail.com at any time. Of course, the Jews are in a state of galut, even with the reintroduction to being in the land of Israel, because we do not have the Temple Mount. At least that's what a lot of people will say, that is the last thing holding us back. So I want to discuss that more in detail. On the line right now, our favorite rabbi from Tzfat, co-author of The World of the Ger, Rabbi David Katz. Rabbi, how you doing out there?
Hey, Ari, thanks for having me back as always. It's a pleasure.
Indeed. So, as I mentioned, a lot of people feel that this is holding us back, the fact we don't have the Temple Mount. And it was interesting because today, Yehuda Glick, who was almost assassinated a few months ago outside of the Nachum Begin Center, he, of course, is involved with the Temple Institute. He's a big fan of going on the Temple Mount. And it was ruled, I believe today, that he would not be allowed to go there and as he wanted, and they're still working on the stipulations of what maybe he'll be able to do. But I thought it'd be good if we talked about this. How much is this holding us back, the fact that the Jews do not control the Temple Mount?
It most likely is everything. It's one of those things that it's weird. It's really weird. It's everything. It's nothing. You know, there's, like you mentioned, Yehuda Glick. You know, here we're in Israel. And we're Jews in Israel, and we know these guys. I mean, I don't know how well you know Yehuda Glick or whatever, but he's approachable.
I've interviewed him. He gave a great amount of his time, and I have his cell number. I mean, he's a really nice guy.
Right. And, you know, I'm a friend of Chaim Richman's, right? And you know, these are guys that we know. They're approachable. You know, you can call the Temple Institute and go up with these guys. And at the very same time, I mean, you realize these guys, in kind of a weird way of saying it, they own the Temple Mount. I mean, that's like their thing. I mean, you don't get more global and universal than that. So it's a very strange connection that it's everything and at the same time, almost like it's Hefker. You know what I mean? It's almost like it's anybody can have a portion of it. So it's a very, very strange entity in Judaism, and I think that where we're going to go today is exploring really what is the issue with the Temple Mount, and on its most extreme side and its most just kind of dormant and exile side. You know, it's a contrast, and both come into the psyche of the Jews and the people worldwide.
Okay, so this question, you know, I came with this idea speaking with a man named Yosef a few years ago about when in 1967, when the Jews recaptured Jerusalem, Moshe Dayan and Ariel Sharon and everyone was there. They actually had the ability to get the Temple Mount then. They decided not to. And one theory I heard is because if that were to occur, we don't know exactly how we would handle that, because you have a big demographic that says not to go on the Temple Mount, and obviously say some should go on the Temple Mount. What's your opinion spiritually why we did not accept the Temple Mount in 1967 and we did not take a Jewish control over it?
Yeah, so look at the whole timeline. Right, Zionism is going to start in around 1740 with the Vilna Gaon. Right, it's called Zionit Gra'it, as we mentioned before, Zionism of the Gra. He is going to send his students to Israel with the Chabad Lubavitch students of the Alter Rebbe. Now that's already profound, because everyone's going to say that the Gra and the Vilna Gaon had issues with the Alter Rebbe. And whatever their issues were, they worked together in sending students together to work in the land of Israel. They're going to get here, and they're going to basically repopulate or reestablish the pipeline of Tzfat, where we're broadcasting from now, and Jerusalem, where we're also broadcasting from now. And that would be the focal point of those journalings and journeys. They're going to run out of money in the 1800s, and that's when the Americans are going to get involved, right? The Bible scholar George Bush from 1844, kind of like a Back to the Future episode, right? Where they're Biff Tannen in every generation. There's a George Bush in every generation, apparently. And he's going to write a commentary on Ezekiel that suggests the Jews should be put back on their soil. That was 100 years before it happened. So it's not prophetic. That's called planning with great strategy. And Canada's going to fall in line. It's going to become a Canada-American right-wing Christian Zionist kind of thing. The Canadians worked on the Queen, and by the time of the early 20th century, Herzl's kind of like a plagiarism took hold. Right? He got a hold of Zionism in that current state, which was a amorphosis from the Vilna Gaon to some kind of Western world concept. Herzl basically puts the final touches on it in his diaries. The World Zionist Congress gets together. The Yishuv is established, and there's people really living here, making Aliyah. World War I comes and goes. The Jews are training alongside the special forces of the British Army. Rav Kook is going to come, and he's going to set up Judaism here. To this day, we serve Rav Kook Judaism in the state of Israel. Even if you're not Dati Leumi, the country operates on Rav Kook Judaism. Whether it's the Shemitah, Heter Mechira, how we do weddings, the Rabbanut, basically. So it's a state entity. And World War II obviously is going to happen. We know that. All the things revolving around that are going to happen. My mother told me, when she was a kid, she was born in 42, so she saw Zionist parades, on, I don't know if it was TV, if they had, or if it was radio, I don't know what it was. They saw parades. And then, Zionism was really big. There was a huge push for Zionism. You had B'nai Brit, and all the men back then actually were ideologues back then. People were very ideological about securing the state of Israel. If you read the Constitution of Zionism, it says, what is Zionism? The belief in securing a Jewish homeland based on common law. That's really all it is. And by 48, there's going to be a state, and the Jews are well equipped to fight the Independence War after having trained alongside the British forces. And they secure, the 48 borders, which anyone has followed the news over the years. The 48 borders were there, and they basically won the Independence War. Land started to expand. And in 67, here's our big moment here. I don't know if I can give over all the details in succinct logical order. But long story short, Israel understood there was going to be a major attack. And they took out all the Arab warring states pretty quickly. Again, for details, just go to Wikipedia and type in 6-Day War. I saw one documentary where they said every Israeli aircraft was able to land, refuel, rearm in 8 minutes. It was back in the air again. Can you imagine that? 8 minutes it was turned over and then launched to go take out more aircraft, whether it was in Egypt, I think it was a Jordan, whatever, all the other states that were involved. And it was you've probably seen also the Krav Maga videos on YouTube and Facebook. And Krav Maga is essentially just be ultimately more aggressive than your opponent. It's not like a skill of Taekwondo or Jiu-Jitsu type things. It's an art form of aggression or, controlled demolition. And so that when Israel blitzed, these guys didn't have a chance, This is what martial arts are founded upon. In the books about war, war quotes, just blitz your opponent and don't give him a chance. And that's what they did. And then you see the videos where they went up to the Temple Mount, right? They recaptured Jerusalem, and you have IDF, I guess it's paratroopers, correct me if I'm wrong, but they secure the Temple Mount. And one guy that was among them was Rav Ariel of the Temple Institute in Jerusalem. And this is his story that he saw and was a part of the recapturing of Jerusalem. taking the Temple Mount, and then like you're saying, Ari, where do we go from here? But before we get into why we did or how we did, think about one amazing thing. They conquered the Temple Mount, and theoretically they could have built the temple. I mean, just theoretically. But in more theoretical terms, Islam was conquered at that minute. And that really is a statement that needs to be thought out. Islam was conquered. I mean, in the most absolute sense. And when you talk to non-Jews about Ger, Noahide, dropping out of Christianity, what Jews don't realize is that Sinai conquered the world. When the non-Jew hears, whatever format it is, New Testament, Old Testament, Bible, whatever word it is, that there was a Sinai moment, the Torah was given to these children of Israel, whatever they are, right? That there are these children of Israel in the world, and nowadays obviously called Jews. And that we're expected to be some kind of like biblical hero. That's how they view us based on the Bible. But at that moment, the world is conquered. They're basically saying, okay, God came and he did his thing, and there are these people that are out there, and they're going to show us the way, and we just never did. So religion becomes a backlash of us not living up to this expectation. And I'm not advocating that the non-Jewish expectation is accurate in all its detail. What I'm saying is, when it's revealed what happened, there's an expectation, and that expectation is a type of, I hate to use the word conquer, but it's a type of conquering, right? Or more submit, but in a good, and it's supposed to be in a holy way. The Jews are supposed to be like the nations and teach the world about God. And the nations are saying, good, that's good. Let's learn about God. So when it doesn't happen, it's kind of like with a man and a woman. The man's supposed to be a man, hold the door open. And what does he do? He slams the door in her face. And it's like, what are you doing? She's going to kill the guy now. And that's how the nations are. So I think Christianity had its moment like that, really with Yashka. It's at that moment when they were learning about Torah in Israel, the fact that there was a Yashka made it a botched attempt, another botched moment in history. We could have basically had the world interested in being Noahide Ger at that time. It just was a wasted opportunity. I don't know what he did or didn't do. Really not my issue. It was just a ruined whatever. And remember, that was also a Temple Mount issue, because the whole thing with Yashka was that he went to the temple and I don't know the story, he challenged the rabbis, whatever it was, and he got killed. But the point is, it was a Temple Mount issue. And so now fast forward 2,000 years, and Islam has already done its thing, and it's already revised the Christian story, right? So now they're the real Jews, and the Christians weren't, and so they fixed, let's say, the Christian problem, as they see it, and now they're hot to trot. But now, lo and behold, the Christians now conspire to put the Jews on the land, for whatever reason, conspiracy theories aside, and Israel conquers the Temple Mount. That is a conquering of Islam. But think this through for 1 second. If Sinai was a conquering, right? If it was the penny dropped, and all that messed it up was the Jews didn't realize the penny dropped, right? It was a wasted opportunity. At 67, the same penny dropped for Islam. Now, when the penny dropped at Sinai, the nations are still waiting for Israel to get that message. And almost as if they went into Christianity as if to say, if you're not going to get it, we're going to do our thing. Whatever. But the point is, it's like, when would the Jews get it? And again, so when the penny drops at the Temple Mount, Islam now is basically saying the same thing, right? You guys had it. Like, what's the problem? You did it. And that's why, the real message of Hamas and all these guys, why are they making problems? Because they're utterly confused. Right? The Jews are in the land. They conquered the Temple Mount. It should have been over 50 years ago. Should have been over. It's like when you have a missed, it's like you call, the girl gives your phone number and you say you're going to call her and you never did. And then a year later you find her number and you say, hey, remember that time I was going to call you and ask you out? She's going to hang up on you. And you're going to say, well, what happened? I thought you were interested. So it's like, it makes no sense that we didn't do what we're supposed to do, which we'll get to. And now Islam is suffering the same fate that, from 2,000 years prior what the world went through, and then Sinai before that. But interestingly enough, now these Christians who are watching the Jews basically destroy Islam, miss their opportunity. Islam is confused, fights back, and now you have right-wing Zionist Christians pushing Israel to be Jews, albeit in a bit of an impure way. But then you have Noahide Ger, who saw 48, who saw 67, to enough of an extent that it knocked him out of Christianity. And this is how Vendell Jones came about and everybody. And they're saying, we just want the Jews to be on the Temple Mount. I mean, this is like rule number one of Noahide Ger. Rule number one is they are Temple Mount supporters, which is why the Temple Institute has huge support by Noahide Ger. Even right-wing Christians are supportive of the Temple Mount, because they're getting almost like a second chance the right way for the Jews to get the message. And this time Islam is in the antagonist rule. So now that we were up there, we did it, we aggressively took it. What it comes down to is the question is now asked: what went? Why would they do this? The answer they say is rabbinically they didn't know what to do. Just like with Moses and with Pinchas, with the killing of Zimri and Cosby, Moses just forgot the law, and it allowed for Pinchas to become the hero. Right? When Moses particularly buried the law, Pinchas arises and brings out the law to its fulfillment. A Talmud Chacham, a Torah scholar, according to Torah, is an aspect of the soul of Moses. So you have to say that this entire process, I believe starting in at least 67, 48, if not somewhere in Zionism, that the universal Torah approach, essentially Ger Torah, just the non-Jews recognizing God, the defeat of the Erev Rav, this is all the soul of Moses issue. The Ethiopians coming in the 80s and the responses in Halacha for that, the nations waking up, saying Shema in the outer part islands of the world. This is all basically the soul of Moses enclosed in the minds of the Torah scholars, and history repeats itself. They are forgetting the law. It's supernatural. It's Moses Pinchas part 2. They are forgetting the law, and ultimately it's going to bring the complete redemption when Pinchas Eliyahu Mashiach will return the law. The law is what is the truth of the Temple Mount? Like in Kabbalah, in prophecy, and in the oral Torah, says the Brisker Rav. And that's what the problem is. That as long as they messed that up and they gave it back to Hamas, we're now in limbo. We are now. It's like when the pin was pulled out of the grenade, and we're just holding the pin in. And everyone knows that if you pull that pin, kaboom. Islam knows that, and they're not prepared to take that pressure off. But they're finished. Think about this logically. Once Islam accepted defeat, they can't go back to undoing that. Right? Even though they're trying to, and they're trying to convince us to forget what we did, as long as we remember the Temple Mount of what happened, Islam is forever defeated. It is already broken. The only thing left is like, you chop the head off a snake and then it wiggles around. Like I saw a video of a python or whatever, I forget if it was a python, whatever it was. They chopped the head off and it literally, the chopped head jumped up and bit a guy. It's on YouTube, right? It was already dead. So the snake of Islam is dead. They already lost. They've been conquered. Our job now is to realize that. And it has been forgotten from us and from our enemies. Our job is to remember that from our friends and from within.
Again, this is the Messiah Hour here on IsraelSportsNewsRadio.com. Thank you for joining us. Our guest is Rabbi David Katz. We're talking about the Temple Mount and if it is the reason why we are being held back at this point. Rabbi Katz, if we were to, let's say, get the Temple Mount tomorrow, logistically, what would happen? Do we start doing sacrifices? Do we not? Tell us the details of what would occur.
The first issue is, how does it occur? This is what a lot of people internally are arguing about, right? Do we go up and build it? Do we build the second temple? Do we build the third temple? I.e., is prophecy something to look forward to in the building of it? Do we avoid prophecy for not having it and then thereby go by the drawings of the second temple, Herod's temple? Do we wait for it to come built from heaven? Is that idea from heaven literal? Is it more of a spiritual concept that the Shefa, the bounty, comes from heaven and we are to build the vessel? So that needs resolved. And that alone is, again, the Kabbalah, Nevuah, prophecy, and oral Torah that will return to Mashiach. To resolve that. Which is why the Rambam says only Mashiach can build the temple. That's why. Because, the Moses aspect has buried the answer to these questions. And you say, why did Moses do it? The answer is that's what Moses does. Right? Again, Moses buried the halacha about Zimri and Cosby and the immoral relationship, and Pinchas grabbed the spear as an extension of Moses and killed him. And he merited the covenant of life and peace. So Pinchas and Moses have this relationship. This through the generations. Moses is in every generation through the Torah scholars, let's say in the revealed aspects. In Eliyahu, he comes in every generation, and he reveals the secrets and maintains prophetic wisdom and the secrets of the oral Torah. So your Moses-Elijah combo is never ended. Or Moses-Pinchas. And the Arizal actually states that in the future, with Mashiach, Moses will be firmly entrenched, his soul in the Mashiach, and Elijah will forever be the interpreter. Meaning it'll always be Moses reveals it to himself and then hides it. And like quantum physics, just like quantum physics, it is revealed in Elijah, and he carries it out through Mashiach. So Mashiach will basically be a quantum entity on a spiritual level like that. When the temple's built, finally, there's a prophecy that the Ger will have begun to do the Korban Olah in the north of Israel, and they will go south to the temple in Jerusalem and engage in peace offerings with all four houses of Israel. Cohen, Levi, Israel, Ger. So there will be offerings. The Jews want to say, Rav Kook said there will be no offerings. Rav Kook didn't say that. Rav Kook said that the Torah says that Jews have been given meat to eat to their as much as they want, whereas Adam and the Noahide before the Jew were not given such a luxury in law. But the temple consumption of meat is not for the sake of eating meat. It's like the afikomen of Passover. The afikomen, the end matzah, the end of the meal, you don't eat that because you're hungry. You eat it when you're particularly not hungry, only according to the mitzvah. So eating meat according to the mitzvah will always be. But eating meat because I'm bored and I just want to have meat for the fun of it, that will no longer be a function of man in the future. I think we can start to see that in our time now. I think meat was simple because I don't think mankind was cultured enough to really appreciate the cuisine of great vegetables and things like that. I mean, we have restaurants today that they didn't have then. Imagine if restaurants were dedicated to really great food instead of McDonald's. I think mankind is at a place in history where we would actually prefer to not eat meat, and to eat really well prepared food. It's just that society doesn't want to make a broccoli bar as opposed to McDonald's. But in the actual refinement of man, I think we're ready to give up meat along those lines, because there's so much more to gain from a refined world. But the temple will again reclaim its meat industry for Passover and offerings, because that is the currency of which the bounty comes down into the temple and maintains the world going around. The Gerim will be engaging in the offerings, obviously, now that they'll be invited in the temple forever. The world's going to be elevated on that level. When I say that the whole world will become Israel, that's what that means. So the temple is going to be driving a holy world. The world's holiness will be driven by that temple. And again, we're there. The non-Jew is realizing they need a temple. Now here's the big question, or the big thing. The only thing holding back world peace and the construction of the temple, whatever its truth may be, is that the Temple Mount has been erased from Jews in Judaism, simply because of the struggles involved with the Temple Mount. The Vilna Gaon teaches, do not force the end by forcing the temple. For if you do arouse the love before its time, I adjure you, O nations, that if you arouse the Jews before their time, then I will punish them because of you. And then we're seeing this exactly in our time. The Jews are being pressured by the Noahide Ger, which is understandable. Right? Everybody wants a temple. But we're not getting it ourselves. We're close. But if everyone would lay off, we would at this point, we would figure it out. The love would be there, and we would just go up and build it. But because it's coming onto us, I mean, we don't have a chance to discover the love. It's like if you're supposed to marry a woman, and you're saying, can we just fall in love naturally? But no, she basically just jumps on top of you and says, I see your potential, we're getting married. The man would say, that's great, I love you, but I don't know if I ever would have had the chance to fall in love with you. So it's a missed opportunity. And we're being pressured into that now, which I agree, I think it's great. It's just that it's not a natural love affair. We didn't fall in love with the Temple Mount. The Temple Mount fell in love with us. And it's not supposed to go that way. And because it's not going the right way, we're being forced into Temple Mount stuff. And there's a whole worldwide movement to release the Temple Mount from Hamas. And the response of the punishment that we were promised by God is that Israel does not want a volatile situation. Because of what happened in 67, of the halacha being buried, no one knows what to do. I mean, the nations are pressuring for a Messiah. There is not a Messiah now. The rabbis, i.e. Moses hidden, is not the Messiah. Therefore, they hide the issue. And I don't mean conspiracy hide. What I mean is the law is just that they're saying we don't know what to do. Therefore, in the learning academies, the Temple Mount has become a non-issue. It's not talked about. It's not condoned. It's fought against. It's told there's no reason to go up. We don't need it. It's a waste of time. Really erasing it from our psyche and textbooks. And from that point, we are a neutered people. We are a Jewish people devoid of any connection to the Third Temple and the Temple Mount. So, any inclination of even desiring to go up has been removed. But when you're in the state of Israel, and Islam is conquered, the Ger is basically conquered as well, and now we're all waiting for liberation from a conquered state to a godly state, and the temple is the only way. It's just like in the same way the Ger was removed from the lexicon for 2,000 years, or righteous, Gentile, or universal Torah, all these things removed. The temple, the Third Temple particularly, Ezekiel's temple, having been removed, we literally don't know what to do. Because, again, it's all motivation has been taken out. People are struggling to find, hey, I'm a really excited Jew. What's a really radical thing I can do to show my love for God? Well, that thing is to go up on the Temple Mount. Or at least to support the Temple Mount or to want it. But because it doesn't become expressed, people have a bit bizarre fascinations. I mean, the wall and this Rebbe, those are great things. But they are infinitely less than the Temple Mount or the temple. So we're placing our exotic energies into strange things when it's in relationship to the third temple. And if we would be allowed to contemplate that, we would all focus our energy very quickly and find an immense love, and the Mashiach would come on clouds of glory. Whereas in our sunken state, being pressured by the nations for good, bad, and the ugly, then we are basically coming to Geula riding on the proverbial donkey.
Again, you're listening to the Messiah Hour here on IsraelSportsNewsRadio.com. The email is MessiahHour@gmail.com. The PayPal is IsraelSportsRadio@yahoo.com if you'd like to make a donation. My guest is Rabbi David Katz, co-author of the book The World of the Ger. Rabbi Katz, what's interesting is, I've gone to the Kotel many, many times, and hundreds of times, and when you walk on the right gate, on the Dun gate, and there is the way you could go to the Temple Mount, there is a sign that says that, I believe the chief rabbi of the state of Israel says that people should not go on the Temple Mount, that it's a sin. There's a lot of people that think that. I want to know why would they think that? Because you're making arguments about we need to get the Temple Mount and control the Temple Mount. So why would so many prominent rabbis say that we shouldn't go up there?
There is a spot that is forbidden completely. But there are many spots that are not forbidden completely. And the way that the rulings go is, in a paraphrased fashion, me speaking as the proverbial rabbi, right? I can't control you. I can't make you guys learn the books and be responsible. So since I can't, we have to forbid the whole thing. Because it's a grave error if somebody goes up there. And we don't want to be responsible for that. So instead of considering people to be responsible, we judge the law according to everyone is irresponsible. And thereby that becomes the law. The people rendering the law, remember the Rambam went up. And his law is such that it's being imposed as a chumrah, a stringency. And those that are advocates of the stringency and no leniency, they themselves are that Talmud Chacham soul of Moshe that's hiding the law. Again, not conspiracy hiding. Rather, it is hidden from them. The soul of Moses himself is hiding it. And it allows for a greater revelation of redemption. So the more that we poskin not to go up from deep spiritual roots, it's setting the stage for an even greater deliverance into redemption. And I'd have to say that the people that are saying not to go up, what the soul of Moses would draw from to make that possible is nearly infinite. It's just haven't learned enough about it. You don't want the redemption, afraid of the redemption, a lack of confidence. The fears are many of why somebody wouldn't want to go up. Maybe they were just told by their superiors, we don't go up. And until you see the light, why would you challenge it? I mean, this is what's fantastic about truth and falsehood. That we all believe falsehood. I mean, I'm a parent of 2 kids. And my kids are 6 and 5. And I realize how many lies I tell to my kids every day. Now, why do I lie to my kids? I make fun of my mom when I tell her this. Because I was lied to as a kid. Right? And I repeat the same Bava Mises that I heard. And then I think about it and I realize man, I'm telling a Bubameister, you know? And the point is that 37, I'm realizing only now things that I always believed my whole life that weren't even true. I just never thought to challenge it. You know, once you're done being 6, you don't go back to all the things your parents told you at 6. But when you have a 6-year-old, you start to realize the things that you were told, why you were told those, and you see, you know, how things are, and you make the decision how you want to parent your kids. Right? So a rabbi receives a tradition from his Rav. That's fine and acceptable. But when, let's say, the new rabbi finds himself in the same position of his Rav, he has to make a decision. You know, has things changed? And we're living in a time where things have changed. For example, 100 years ago, there was no Noahide. So if a non-Jew comes and says, Rabbi, can I learn Torah? The answer is flat out no. But today there's a precedent of Noahide in the world. So Torah does change. Our policy of Torah changes. Doesn't happen often. Right? I'm not an advocate, let's say, of reform and just rewriting the books. But when there is a bona fide change, you have to roll with the punches. Right? I mean, Hanukkah was a change. They brought Hanukkah. Purim was a change. They brought Purim. Can't think offhand. I mean, the state of Israel was a change. Right? Shemitah coming back with Rav Kook was a change. Certain things do change for the good. I know most of the time it's for the bad. Kitnius, one wife. Some people are unhappy about that. You know, tefillin only in Shachris. There's a lot of things that have been taken away we can complain about. But there's also things that have come about where we've gained them back. And one of those things, obviously, is Israel, Jerusalem, Temple Mount. And again, the people in charge, remember, this is still brand new. The guys in 67, I mean, they were still pretty much in the old school. And if the Lubavitcher Rebbe would have been here, things would have been different. That's the one complaint people have against him. I'm not saying it's a complaint, but man, if he would have been here, I mean, that would have been for sure the end. Because he would have been the guy to fill. At that time, whether you love or hate the Rebbe, pretty hard to say that if he would have been here in 67, that he wouldn't have been the guy to lead us to freedom. I mean, pretty hard to say that. This, you see, it's such a complex issue, even that. I mean, only now, almost 50 years later, we're starting to realize what happened in 67. I mean, the revelation was so great. It may have been the full redemption. You know, those guys may have just realized that they weren't Mashiach for all intents and purposes. And that revelation is not stopping, and it didn't stop. In fact, it's only growing stronger every day. And so Islam remains conquered every day. This is why Israel is safe and secure every day. And this is what we have to do as a Jewish people, is to realize something called Rashus. We have it in our hands, an ability and a permission to take it back. The nations are screaming at us, take it back. And the more that happens, the more it's buried, and ultimately it's in its time I will hasten it. We're basically gearing up for the Messianic revelation, where there will be the return of prophecy, Kabbalah, and oral Torah in the guise of Pinchas Eliyahu, and that will be the time that we reclaim the Temple Mount, and we will at least begin and understand what it is to begin the construction and bringing down of the third temple, Ezekiel's temple.
Again, this is the Messiah here on IsraelSportsNewsRadio.com. My guest is Rabbi David Katz, co-author of the book, The World of the Ger. Rabbi Katz, what do you see happening in the next few years regarding the Temple Mount? Do you see that we get it back? I guess I would say, are we only going to get it back through Mashiach coming, or do you see some type of revolution or some type of organization like the Temple Institute to try to encourage more people to go on the Temple Mount, and that there is Jewish control from that perspective?
That's a good question, isn't it? Where it's all fun and games in history, projecting far and back, but where are we now? That's the golden question. I think we're any second, any minute, any hour, any day, any week, any month, any year from knowing that answer. I mean, how long? I'm asking you right now, Ari Lewis, How long have you basically been looking at the news and waiting for Assad to fall?
It could happen any day.
That's it. We've been saying this for years. I remember back in 2011, Assad was supposed to go down. Right? There's a Zohar about the 12 ministers of Ishmael. And then when they're done, Gula comes. And I'm saying, we got Bin Laden. You got to figure he's one of those guys. Saddam, Gaddafi, all these guys. And, I mean, man, Assad must be one big, heavy dude. Because there's no way he's holding on this long. And you see with ISIS, I mean, there's certainly a crescendo. And Ishmael is like the star player of the crescendo. According to Galus Ishmael, according to the Zohar. Who knows? It's just weird. Arab Spring has been probably the weirdest thing in history. The fact that it's lasted this long and twisted, it's like that game where you pull the sticks out, you got to collapse the structure, but it's coming to a head. When Bibi addressed Congress saying, basically, he's going to hit Iran if they don't stop it, and Iran's not backing down, the Islam is challenging Israel, if you did conquer the Temple Mount, which you did, let's see how strong you really are. And Islam is pressing that button, and yet they're conquered at the same time. It's like, I don't know if you saw the last episode of Voyager, Star Trek Voyager, that the ship made it back to their quadrant in space. And they had an encounter along the years with the Borg. And the Captain Janeway, understood how to go back, I guess, in time or a place where, like a portal where the Borg were. And if they were to collapse the Borg, they would come back to safety much faster and would save the whole crew. So with that in mind, it's hard to tell. It's very hard to tell how things are going to happen with Ishmael, the Temple Mount, right? It's hard to tell. We could have been done already. Iran's in motion. They want to do the bomb. It's weird. It's really strange. It could happen in any second, and it can last on for however many more years.
One of the things, I guess, we're in the situation of a lot of prosperity as far as Judaism. People have the ability to come to Israel. People have the ability to put on tefillin and keep the mitzvot. Why, though, do people seem to choose some mitzvot over the others, especially in regards to Israel, Mashiach, and the Temple Mount? What's your opinion on that?
Just not their portion of soul. You only get involved in things that you get involved in. There are the Rizal Kabbalah says that the tikkun of the Bria, the repair of the world, is for the tzaddikim. Everybody else is basically just holding up the creation. So we're waiting for the tzaddik, Mashiach Tzidkenu. And there are people that are going to. Let's just call it. Let's say there's an industry of Mashiach, right? If the whole creation is holding up the creation just so that the righteous can do their thing, then Mashiach has an industry, and those that are in his industry will be Mashiach people. Those that are not in that industry, but in a completely different industry, just have no portion of it. I mean, they're not even looking for redemption, so to speak. They're happy in Brooklyn. They have their houses. They have their jobs. They get their Olam Haba. Gullus is good for those people. There's probably a big industry of Mashiach. It's called the State of Israel. And there are those that work that entity, and there are those that just support that. And the job of Mashiach, the Tzaddik, and those Tzaddikim that came before us is to prepare everybody for that industry. Meaning, if the Vilna Gaon did his job as a Tzaddik, but not Mashiach Tzaddik, then he would get people to be joining the Mashiach Tzaddik industry. Right? And it's like switch jobs. supporting Mashiach, supporting Gula. And that's really what the blessing of the Baal Shem Tov was. That until your well springs reach this, the whole world. And he talked to the Mashiach at that point. That's what Chassidus is. Chassidus is basically, along these lines, the Mashiach industry, right? What is Chabad doing? Mashiach now. That's an entire world's largest religious organization dedicated to converting people from non-Mashiach industry into Mashiach industry. So that's what it's about. Just getting people into Mashiach, then it just only supports the matter that much more so.
All right, again, this is the Messiah Hour here on IsraelSportsNewsRadio.com. The email is MessiahHour@gmail.com. Our guest is Rabbi David Katz, co-author of the book The World of the Ger. Last question we have for you, Rabbi. Talk about the still holiness, the importance of going to the Kotel, even if we don't have control of the Temple Mount, because I know some people say the Kotel's not that big a deal, but I think it's the closest thing we have to the Temple Mount, even because of the situation. So talk about the importance of the Kotel, if you agree with my stance or disagree. Either way, I'd like to hear your thoughts.
I'm going to throw you a curveball.
Okay.
Obviously, I like the wall. The wall, I have a relationship with the wall. I like the Temple Mount because it's extremely profound. The wall, look, you live in Jerusalem. I don't, right? So you have a different thing than I do. If I was in Yerushalayim like you, I would be davening at the wall just like you do, right? You cannot daven on the Temple Mount. That's number one. Number two, I love davening at the wall. So, but for davening, but as anything other than that, I don't like it. But that's the thing. When you're in Jerusalem, the wall is the place to daven. But as a tourist, I find it loathsome. As a place of makom tefillah, it's tremendous. One of my favorite things to do is, just like there are people from Yerushalayim that come on crazy suicide missions to Tzfat to kind of just daven and learn. My thing is to do that in Jerusalem. I get on a late bus. You can come in at like 1 in the morning, take a cab to the wall, and just learn all night. Take on Chatzos at the wall, daven nates, and take a bus back. Like that to me is that you cannot do on the Temple Mount, and that is an amazing night at the wall. I love those nights at the wall. It's incredible. But on a different note, the Vilna Gaon says in Kol HaTorah, the book about redemption, that the fight against the Sitra Achra, the Satan, the Samech Mem, is in the gates of Jerusalem at the wall. So when you're there davening and praying and learning at the wall, you should know you really are doing something. You're fighting the wars of God, and that's where the real effect is. And in the time of the end, it's going to be there. So I think to treat the wall as a gimmick in a tourist attraction with Obama with his little plastic or paper yarmulke is pretty silly. But if you treat the wall as the most serious arena for serving God in exile, to basically bring good things into the world, you don't get a better spot than the wall. And obviously, someone like you, Ari, that it's your avoda, 600 plus times you've been there, that's an amazing thing. That's what it's about. That's what it is about. If more people would just do that, just recognize what the wall is. The Temple Mount, in truth, should at least lend itself to what the wall is. But if you're devoid of that, what are you really doing there? What bothers me about the wall is the shtusim that people do there. Their lack of reverence of what it is. Don't just call it a holy place. There's a dynamic there, right? That's what bothers me about the walls, that people don't know or appreciate that dynamic. But when you go there with that dynamic in mind, it's one of the most amazing experiences you can have. And like for me, I like to do it at night, Tikkun Chatzos. But everyone's got their thing. Again, I think it's 1A, 1B, not in terms of greater or lesser. Just, Scottie Pippen, Michael Jordan, You got the Temple Mount and the wall. They just go together. totally go together.
But which one's which? The Temple Mount is Michael Jordan, right?
I think 2 is 1, and it's Dennis Rodman.
Oh. But Dennis Rodman was in North Korea with the dictator. The dictator likes murdering mass numbers of people in basketball for some reason. But that's what it is.
At least he's not a Bruce Jenner fan.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's not a lot of Bruce Jenner fans right now. It's a weird situation. Again, this has been the episode of Messiah Hour. That concludes our program. I want to thank everyone for listening. Of course, the email is messiahhour@gmail.com. And if you want to make a financial donation, you can do so through PayPal, IsraelSportsRadio@yahoo.com. And my guest has been Rabbi David Katz. The book, The World of the Ger, can be found on gerger.com. You can also go to somazal.com. That's the rabbi's website that can help you figure out your name and the meaning behind it and how you can find out more about your mazal. Rabbi, thank you for being on today. Great job as always.
Thanks for having me back, Ari, and go Cavs.
All right. I'm picking Warriors at 6, but we'll see what happens. Again, this has been the Messiah Hour. Everyone have a great Shabbat. We'll have more programming on the other side next week. This is the Messiah Hour on IsraelSportsandNewsRadio.com.